You're listening to the Listen Up Show, Startup Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Mitchell Chadro, your host. Today on show 037, listen up, trusted friends. It's your business, it's your family, it's your life. Now let's get started.
Do you want to know how I came up with the name? It's actually do you listen to Rihanna at all?
Yeah, sure.
So I was driving to meet with one of the CEOs of a company, and he was like, "What's the name of your company?" And at the time, I didn't have a name, and I was like, to try to buy time, I was like, I'll email you everything. And I was driving to the meeting, and the song, Rihanna's song, "Possible Candidate" came on the radio, and I was like, "Candidate," and that's called my lawyer.
That's great. See, now that's a great story. Hey, Amber, thanks for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to ask you questions about your story today. So when people actually ask you, what do, you reply?
So our elevator pitch is actually quite simple, and it kind of speaks for itself, the name. So I say, the company is called Candidate, and we find someone a job in technology and or a date.
And how did you actually get started in business?
So I guess we can start from the beginning. I graduated high school early when I was 16 and a half, and I moved out to California to go to school, to go to UCLA, and I was going to school for political science and sociology, so that way I could, be a lawyer. And I ended up coming to Pennsylvania for the summer and getting a job at Comcast, working in the HR department and everything. And so I ended up transferring to Villanova and finishing, which kind of got me my foot in the door in the recruiting world.
So you went from, let's say, wanting to sort of go into law to Philadelphia to Comcast to Villanova.
I was finishing at Villanova, but someone introduced me to a tech recruiting company. So I started working there, and I found that, I'd place a candidate in a job, and they would say, "You find me this awesome job. Now I'm in a great place in my life. Now if only you could find me a wife." And so that kind of kept coming up. Either that or, they would confide in me. I would get to know everything about them, and they would end up asking me out. And I would say, "No, but I know someone." And so I would start setting them up with my friends, all of my girlfriends that were single.
So with your day job, how do you actually pay the bills?
Yeah, so I was doing that, and I decided that this could potentially be an actual business. So I started going to tech events and taking polls of software developers who would utilize a service like this, and the results were really high. We had 90% that said, "Yes, absolutely, this is something I would definitely do," and the other 10% said no because I'm married, but if I wasn't married, or if I found you years ago this service, I would definitely use it. So I ended up quitting my job. I finished at Villanova, quit my job, and I started Candidate August 2014.
So was that your what I refer to as your entrepreneurial birthday?
Yes. Yep. And it's actually my birthday too, is August. So
wow. Is that right? So that was kind of like the start to taking ownership of your life, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. I quit my job in like the last week of July 2014, and the next day I was on on LinkedIn reaching out to anyone I could possibly reach out to that had the title CEO or CTO or anyone that would meet with me, and to pitch them my idea. And then, a week later I was meeting with, CEOs and investors, and it kind of just took off from there.
Please sign up to my email list for the latest special offers exclusive for our Listen Up Show Startup Entrepreneur Podcast audience at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. I have been providing business advice, resources, and help to entrepreneurs for over 20 years, and I'm looking forward to helping all of you. Sign up for my email list, again, at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. I will provide you with full transcripts for each interview, my ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, the Startup Checklist, and many other education and training materials, all back at mitchellchadro.com/sign sign up. Now, when you say that you met with investors, are you a one-person show? Do you have a team behind you?
Yes, so in May of 2015, we got an investment from a gentleman named Mike Golden, whose company was with GSI Commerce that sold to eBay, and he was also with ShopRunner and a couple other tech companies in the area. And so after, me reaching out to everyone I could think of on LinkedIn, he came across someone, one of his companies, kind of told him about what I was looking to do. And so I met with him and, he kind of understood, my vision for the company. And 8 months later, he invested. And
now, you know how they say about, you need to focus on a particular idea, one idea, mm-hmm. and sort of build out from there. So you now have like two different ideas here. You have mm-hmm. one where you're kind of going off onto the left hand, you're kind of finding people a job, and on the other hand, you're finding people a date. Do you find yourself sort of in two camps and kind of going back and forth? How do you maintain that focus?
Yeah, so the strategic piece behind Candidate isn't necessarily, just trying to set people up on dates or whatever. I thoroughly enjoy that and fulfilling the aspect of our candidate's life that's not fulfilled. But the strategic piece behind it is to build the database of passive candidates. So these are the folks in tech that aren't necessarily looking for a job. But in order to qualify for our dating service, you have to be in tech. So we, gather all their information. We know how much they're making, where they live, everything about them on that side. So while we're actively recruiting tech candidates, on the job side, we're organically building our database on the date side. So, eventually what we're looking to do is use predictive analysis to be able to, someone will log in to the date side and we'll be able to advertise a position we already know they're a good fit for based on what we already have, about them, location, how much they're making, and their specific technology skill set.
So you get this one big investment from Mike Golden, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then how do you sort of, when does the revenue start to come in? How does the business model look in terms of, being sustainable over time?
Yeah, so we were pretty profitable early on. Our overhead cost isn't, terribly high because, we have an office in the city at a co-working space. And after we got the investment, I was able to hire my director of business development. And, we have a couple consultants working for us. And we actually utilize the Drexel Co-op program. So we have.
How did you get involved with them?
So we were referred from a guy named Chuck Sacco who runs the entrepreneurship program over there, and he introduced us.
Oh, sure. I know that name.
Yeah. So we, it's what I like to say is that Philadelphia is a small, big city. As long as you're closely, you're going to events and you're putting yourself out there and you're getting your name out there. We've gotten to a point now where I can't go down the road without people, kind of knowing who I am, what we do. Oftentimes they'll say, "Hey, candidate," and not necessarily say, "Hey, Amber." But
the show has three main sponsors. HostGator will sponsor our startup round. I use HostGator to host all of my websites, so check out the special offer exclusive to my podcast audience and get 25% off your web hosting package today at mitchellchadro.com/HostGator. Audible, an Amazon company, sponsors our Fast Pitch, my book club recommendations, back at mitchellchadro.com/Audible. Snappa sponsors our wrap-up round. For all my graphic design needs, I was so impressed with this company that I actually interviewed the founder, Christopher Gimmer, on our show 28 back at mitchellchadro.com/show028. But to start your Snappa design graphic today, go on over to mitchellchadro.com/Snappa. Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned something that's really important, not only in business, but I guess in dating as well. You kind of put yourself out there. So what do you do for those people in the tech niche that have a really good job, but for whatever reason, for one reason or another, aren't able to find a date, or whether it be because of time, because they're shy? I mean, having that skill set of putting yourself out there, isn't that important?
Yeah, so another reason why I came up with Candidate and, felt that, it was a need was because my best friend is a software developer, and he was living in New York, and he was making all this great money, and he said to me, he was like, I love my job, I make all this great money, but what's loving what you do and, having all these funds if you have no one to share life, the beautiful things in life with. So he was like, the last thing I want to do after, I'm working at this tech startup, last thing I want to do is go to a bar after work and to meet someone or go online dating, because online dating is like going through resumes on a job board. Oddly enough, he was like, and that's why we outsource it to recruiters, because we tell them what we're looking for. And then based on that, they, set us up, with the appropriate candidates that fit what we're looking for. So he was like, if someone could tell me where to be, when to be there, like, a job interview, essentially, he was like, I would pay them any amount of money.
So let me ask you, you've been doing this for, since August of 2014. How many people right now are in your database, and how many employers have you already lined up in terms of making this a sustainable model for you?
Sure. So we have about, I would say, 75 companies in this area that we work with, from tech startup companies. Our niche is small to mid-sized companies, because I like to be able to talk to the CEO or the VP of engineering and kind of say, all right, listen, this is what, the candidates are telling us, this is how, we should go about this. I often refer to like the recruiting practice as, making a souffle, because, it's a very delicate process. And, these are people, and these are, big decisions that they have to make in terms of, a job and or a life partner.
So given that the Philadelphia market is the fifth largest market in the United States, and you work with small to medium-sized employers and only in the tech area, how many employees are we talking about in terms of your definition?
Yeah, so we have thousands in our database currently, and we
employers.
No. I'm sorry.
So you've got 75 employers, and you've got you said that you've already signed up thousands of.
No. In our database, those are just active, passive, whatever tech candidates who may be looking or they're not looking now, just in our database.
So how many people do you have in your database that have actually come on and that you've actually had them come in and basically enter their information, however you do that?
So in our database of people, we do have thousands, but that's just people, whether or not we've found them a job or not, but because it's very specific. We may have a company that says I'm hiring for Ruby on Rails, engineer, and they have to have this, and this, and in this area. So we may talk to a Ruby on Rails, engineer who wants to work remote or lives in the suburbs or whatever it may be. So we put them in our database for, when a position does come up.
Right, but these people have given their permission to sort of be in your database. You're saying you have probably about at least 2,000 people who have literally signed up, so to speak?
Yes, that is correct.
So how are you, obviously you have a business developer or a new business development person who goes out and obviously, finds not only the employers, but how do you go out there and basically recruit these clients or these potential people that are looking for jobs and or dates? How do you bring them to your site, or how do you get them to sign up?
Sure. So a lot of what we do is very organic. We don't work with any job boards. So we do it in a very organic way where the candidates could kind of get to know us and trust us. And so, what we do is we host a lot of tech events. So currently right now we're working with a meetup group called Data Philly, where we partnered with Penn, and we're doing an initiative for cancer and technology. And so every other Tuesday at our office, we, have techies come in and, contribute to this project called Cognoma. And, it could be from data scientists to front-end developers to project managers, all basically just donated their time. And so, in doing so, word of mouth, again, here in Philadelphia, because it's such a small, big city, a majority of our, clients and candidates is word of mouth and, kind of just getting our name out there and people that have worked with us before.
But that's a lot of word of mouth. To be able to have accumulated, let's say, a few thousand people in your database, that would mean that you have to have a certain number of people in these, whatever you want to refer to them as, webinars or presentations or, meetups or get-togethers. So how have you been able to sort of generate a profitable business in less than, in a little bit more than 2 years and these type of numbers? What type of revenue at this point, if you're able to say, are you able to sort
Sure.
of bring in at this point?
So let's just say we're working on a tech position. So the company will hire us to find them a candidate. So for a candidate, I guess on average, the salary would be about $100K. So we'll get roughly $20,000 off of that. And then if the candidate wants to go through the date side, and we're still kind of working the numbers out on this, but for every $20,000 we get on the date side, we would get $2,000. But again, the big initiative is not necessarily just to set people up on dates; it's to build that passive candidate database.
But isn't your model though that the employer is paying that 20?
Yes.
Right. So on the date side though, if you're getting 20 from the employer because of placing that techie, what is the techie then paying you on the date side? Especially if they're doing both, they're obviously getting a job. They're also potentially getting a date.
Yeah. So, and again, it's not exclusive to either service. So if you're in tech and just want a job, or if you're in tech and just want a date.
I appreciate that.
So the company would pay us $20,000 roughly. And then the candidate, if they decide that, I'm in a place in my life financially where, I'm ready to settle down with someone, they'll pay us, and again, we're kind of working out the numbers with this, but around $2,000.
Now, are you fairly upfront with the candidate? Because if the candidate thinks that they're earning 100, is the candidate only getting 80 and you're getting 20? Is that
No. Not at all. So the company, that's their annual salary. So we get a percentage of their annual salary from the
I got you.
client.
And so you actually have signed contracts now with 75 employers, correct?
Yes.
And so what has been your strategy? And again, it might be the same, although it might be different. That's why I'm asking. Been your strategy then in terms of then reaching out to the various employers? Because up until this point, you really haven't been in this particular space. So you're competing with so many well-known names, people who have been in the industry for quite a number of years. So how are you sort of differentiating yourself and getting these contracts signed?
Absolutely. And, it's interesting because we've worked with companies where they're like, oh, well, we're working with, this, and this company that has been around for years and has a great reputation, blah, blah, blah. And what makes us want to work with you guys? And,
sure.
I tell them that, just give a, obviously, they need to see for themselves, but give us a chance. So let us show you. And with, I think that larger companies kind of, and I found have lost the finesse of the actual recruiting and, the matchmaking of, matching people with the right job. So oftentimes with larger companies, it's all about the metrics and kind of just I've found, and candidates have, told me and confided in me saying that it feels very transactional, like putting a butt in a seat. And so, I've tried hiring internally for recruiters, and I refuse, honestly, to hire someone, internally from a company that has that mentality, because we really look at the holistic view of the candidate's life, and, we make sure that it's the right fit. And it may take a little bit longer, to fill the position, or we might fill it right away, but we make sure it is the right fit, and we're very thorough with that. And the way that
how many employees do you actually have
internally at Candidate?
Yes,
we have 3,
and including yourself, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. And so as far as revenue goes, like for example, last year for 2016 versus 2015, what would you say your revenue has been in terms of an increase from the full year before that in 2015?
Yeah, so 2015 is when we got the investment and I was able to hire, internally. And so, it was kind of like ramping up and everything, getting acclimated, getting our name out there. We were on the cover of a magazine, a local magazine around here, which, drew a lot of traction to what we're doing, again, organically. And so that was a month or a year that we were really trying to ramp up and build up.
And what was that? What was that magazine? What was the circulation on that?
It was Philly Weekly, and
okay.
we were on the cover of it, and then we had an article on us in there. So that definitely drew a lot of attention to kind of what we're doing.
And how did you arrange that relationship to get on the cover?
Sure. So that was just people hearing about what we're doing, and I think the reason, again, why it's been word of mouth is because no one thus far that based on my research and everything has actually combined both recruiting and matchmaking. And the reason is because there are recruiting companies that are very successful, and there are matchmaking companies and dating companies that are very successful. But, if you have an established business and you try to incorporate the other side, it's tough because people, know your business as what your focus is. With Candidate, we come in as a fresh new look into both recruiting and matchmaking because we have all the information on our candidates.
It's interesting. I first came across you on LinkedIn, and I really love the platform because I enjoy it just because, you can really get to meet a lot of people very fast, very quick, with a lot of information at your fingertips, and has very good messaging. And so as it was kind of coming across my screen, and I must have read the name very fast, and I said, wow, this is a really creative, catchy name. And I thought it said Candidate. And I thought, what is this Candidate? And I started looking closer and closer and closer, and I'm like, candidate. But then I saw what it was that you were doing, and instantly, as soon as I saw what you were trying to attempt to do, the first thing that I thought of was my second interview with Alex Hart, who actually was the former president and CEO of MasterCard International, who really is a finance guy. He's a payments guy. He's a credit card guru. What does this fella have anything to do with dating? Sure enough, the guy's like best buds with the guy who started eHarmony, and he's on the board there. So I thought, gee, this is a local person who's not only obviously trying to help people find a job, she's also trying to find them a date. That's why it's called Candidate as opposed to Candidate. But I thought, she's focusing on both things. How is she doing it? So that's why I wanted to obviously interview you. So with that in mind, as far as revenue goes, are you able to talk just a little bit about that? Because I think it's helpful for people that are trying to start up in terms of, what it takes to sort of ramp up to get to this level.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that people come across Candidate as, and I get messages from people from California, from Boston, from New York saying, when are you guys coming here? Like, we have a great tech scene here, but, we need some dates too. And we actually had a very large company in this area say, okay, we're going to be relocating a ton of people here for tech jobs, and we may want to partner with you guys potentially to help us, on the other side. Ironically enough, a couple months later, now we're working with them on the job side as well, but we're in conversation there. So again, right now, everything that we're doing currently has been pretty manual. And it's because, we can't be too, we need to be frugal-ish with, our funds. We're a startup company. And, now we're at a point where, we have a client that the company is $1 billion company, and they, the CEO loves the work that we've done. So here's the thing. So Candidate has such a unique business model that it gets people wanting to meet with me, wanting to talk with me, to learn more. And that's, I think, our hook. And so the CEO of this $1 billion company we work with said, I can't believe what I'm reading right now. Like, I want to meet you. And so we ended up meeting, and he was like, okay, I'm going to give you a shot to, we're working with all the big companies, but I'm going to give you a shot here. We ended up doing very, very well, filling all the positions. I remember it was December 2015, and I was working over Christmas to fill these positions. And, because of that, he was like, I sit on the board of 8 other companies in Boston. When you're ready to expand to Boston, you have 8 clients ready to go, waiting here for you. So that, I think what we're doing, it's giving us more opportunity. And yeah, we're going up against the big players, but I've never felt intimidated by those big players because, of our unique business model.
Give me an idea in terms of that. Let's say you have 75, employers, you have 2,000 people in your database. How many people last year did you, A, sign up for, let's say, a position, and B, how many successful dates did you set up, however you define that, for the client?
Sure. So we, on average, were placing around 4 people a month. And again, this was between 3 people in my company, including myself. There's a lot of hustling. We don't have, as many people as I would like right now to be able to. But
if I'm counting correctly, let's just call it 50, and let's just say that the average salary is 100. Are you saying that your gross revenues were $1 million?
Close to it, yes.
And that doesn't include the date. So
that does not include the date side. So on the date side, because we're only a 3-person company, a majority of our business has been on the job side. So we do have.
Is that mostly because of just your focus, or has that just been the way it's shaken out? I mean, in terms of your business model, given the fact that you're setting it up this way, wouldn't you like to have the revenue come 50-50? Or
oh, absolutely.
So what are you doing right now to sort of pivot as you're learning? What is it that you're doing that finding challenging? Somehow it's not up to the same amount of revenue.
Sure. So I've been doing a lot of research, in the data science, predictive analysis space, and I've gotten a lot of really good insight, but we need to really build a platform that will be able to, use the technology to automate and kind of aggregate all the data, so that way we're not manually doing as much work on the date side. So we have this database, and
now are you incorporated, or is this an LLC? Is this an S corporation? It's an LLC in Pennsylvania.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And so everything that we're doing, it's hard. I started the company when I was 22 years old, and so I've found that, and now I'm 25, and I found that, I'm just learning as I go. So I'm not like an expert in any area, and so I really rely heavily on, my board and, my advisors and stuff to kind of show me and guide me in the right way.
Tell me about your advisory board. How did you sort of handpick them, and I'd like to refer to them as your team. Who are they, and put them together?
So I'm sorry, I use that term loosely. My advisory is more so people that advice. We have a board of directors, which is Wayne Kimmel, who is, I'm not sure if you know Wayne Kimmel. He's in the area. He's with
I know that name. He just wrote a book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what's amazing.
See how powerful LinkedIn is? I mean, you learn all about these people. All the information just comes over your phone. It's actually incredible. Okay, so Wayne helps you in that regard. Okay.
Yeah, and then we have Mike Golden, and then we have Mike. So we're getting the investment, and Mike Golden's his accountant said, I want in on this too, and so he invested as well. So our board consists of 4 people, I'm sorry, including myself.
Who was the third person?
His name is Josh Dunoff, so he's our finance guy.
As far as everything being a challenge then, I mean, obviously somebody had to help you with the legal contract, someone obviously had to help you with a website. I mean, obviously with 3 employees, you're obviously outsourcing all of that. How are you finding those individuals, and what are you doing to sort of leverage your finance?
Yeah, so like I said, when I first started the company, I was a 22-year-old. I had no idea what I was doing, and I really utilized my network. And there was a gentleman who had started his own law practice, kind of focused in on startups, and so I had reached out to him, and we had coffee, and he ended up setting up our LLC for us.
Okay.
And, later on in, fast forward a couple of years, now we refer business to him. And so, my biggest thing is, like, my favorite word ever is reciprocity, because, you never know when you could help someone else, or they could help you, or whatever it may be, but, always, doing the right thing. So starting the company, I really, really utilized my own resources.
Who actually helped you put together the website?
Sure. So our website was built by someone in my investors network. And so he came on, built the website. And I look at this as phase 1, because when we build the platform, it's definitely going to pivot and change a little bit. But this was a place where people could, see what we do, fill out an application for either the job side or the date side. And it's really funny because when we first started, I guess in WordPress in the back of the website, there's this button that you switch on, which allows Google to track how many people are going to your site and all that stuff, and you being able to be visible to Google searches. And for some reason and I think it was my fault, I will take total responsibility for it, I believe that button was not switched on. So for the first year, we had no traffic from Google alone.
Wow.
And we still had 20,000 page views within.
So let's get this straight, because obviously there's other startup entrepreneurs that are out there. They're obviously wanting to bring traffic to their website, and something as simple as a little switch could mean the difference between obviously getting considerable traffic and, 20,000 page views, depending upon how you're viewing your statistics, might be okay. It's not what it could have been. So do you know exactly, are you able to describe it in terms of what that actually was?
Yeah, I mean, the 20,000 was from Facebook, was from Instagram, Twitter, it was from all social media sources, but none of it was from people actually going into Google and saying, candidate or job, date, whatever. None of it was based on any SEO, which goes to show.
But what was it though? What was that switch? Because obviously when he recognized it, it had to be like almost like an aha moment for you, like the switch bulb kind of went on and said, "Oh my gosh, this is."
Yeah, so it was actually a friend of mine that came to our website, and she went in on her own and was like, "Hey, I don't think you guys are on Google search at all." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she went into WordPress and saw that the switch wasn't turned on.
But what was that, out of curiosity? When you say a switch?
Sure, it's like a button that says recognize.
In terms of the numbers then, but on the dating side, how many dates have you set up?
So we have a number of dates that, have gone off, and again, this is we're still testing everything. And I think for a while we're going to be testing to see kind of what works, what doesn't work, and especially with us doing it very manually. Right now, it's, our database is large, and we say, okay, this is a techie, he's fine. So this is what adds credibility to our daters, is that we've done the background check references and we know they're financially stable. So that alone makes, on the date side, I'll go into, a cafe or something and go up to a group of people and say, hey, are you guys sick of online dating? Awesome. Come join Candidate because, again, we've done the background check references, we know they're financially stable. And so, and it's a free, and those people don't necessarily need to be in tech because we're not actively looking for someone for them, but they have to qualify that they're, working, so, professional. So they put their LinkedIn, their information. So boom, we already have all their information.
So if they're only doing the dating, they don't have to be in the tech background, correct?
No, but we're not going to be actively looking for someone for them.
And how do you charge them then?
So we don't charge them. We don't charge that side right now. Currently.
So how are you earning money on that side?
From the folks, from the techies. So we say we get them a 20% increase in their salary.
No. I mean on the dating side, how do you?
Yeah. So they right now it's between 2 and 3% of their salary that they pay us, separate from the job side. So this is the candidate paying us that.
But what if the candidate? What if they're not a techie candidate? What if it's just somebody who comes onto your site and wants to sort of join to?
So they can be in our database, but we're not going to be actively finding someone for them. And the reason is because we needed to find a niche, and our niche is software developers who are working at these tech companies, don't have time necessarily to date. And we can kind of prep them for an interview like we would for, a job. And oftentimes, they're talking to computers all day. So we kind of.
So how do they find somebody using your site? How would they?
They don't. So right now it would be us setting them up just like on an interview. So it mirrors the recruiting process. So we provide feedback after the date as we would after an interview too. So
now, what on the dating side, you're the female to male, because obviously it's supply and demand. I mean, in terms of have you found it challenging on one side versus another? Have there been certain people that have been more receptive than others?
So I will say that it is the tech industry is and I hate to say this, but it is a majority male dominated.
That's what I mean.
We do have some female, engineers as well that, that are interested in the dating side. But, yeah, I mean, it is a majority, that is the larger majority. So in our database, we have, folks that are not necessarily in tech is a majority of female. So has that been a challenge? I mean, in terms of just supply and demand, and I don't mean it in a crude fashion. I mean just to be able to get enough female, whether they be in the tech industry or any other industry, to basically say, I'm interested in this, that there's a pool of people that you can sort of, go to and say, I'd like to pair you up with somebody who, we're working with on the candidate side. No, that's the easy part, gathering those folks into the database. Because like I said, we go up to them and say, all right, are you sick of online dating? Because with online dating, there's this, such thing as catfish, where you don't know who you're meeting, or their picture could look completely different. This way, like, we like to refer to ourselves as almost like a friend setting you up on a date with someone that they know. So, and again, it's all manual just because of what we have currently. We would be looking to be able to build a platform that can kind of hand select that for us and then shortlist it, and then we set them up, with that.
So what have been some of your successes that would you say over the last few years you would define as you're doing pretty good?
So in terms of the job side or in terms of the date side?
Some challenges more on the date side than you have, say, on the recruiting side. Maybe talk about some successes and some of your challenges and what you're going to do going forward to pivot.
Absolutely. So we do have a couple that's engaged. We have a couple of couples that live together and have been dating for a while, and we have a couple couples that have are just kind of casually dating, but still very much provide us feedback and everything after, and then we have some dates that didn't go as planned. And so what we do is we gather that feedback and we say, okay, you talked about this the whole time, and this is why she never wants to go out with you again. So it's kind of providing that constructive feedback, just like, again, on the job side, like you talked negative towards your last employer, so this is what we're not going to do in our next interview. So we provide that feedback, and I think that's something that the dating sites don't necessarily have, because there are times, and I'm guilty of it. I've gone on a date and I didn't hear back from the person, and I'm like, why didn't I hear back from them? Now you're able to kind of know and grow from that experience.
But isn't it true? We talk about scalability. Interview a lot of successful entrepreneurs. We talk a little bit about scalability, and so with 3 people here right now, even if you were to then hire a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, in terms of scalability, I mean, what are your goals going forward in terms of taking this business to the next level? What are some of the things that you're going to need to do over the next several years to get to where you need to be?
Yes, and that's my biggest challenge, I think, is the scalability. And we could go off of the recruiting, a normal recruiting firm and how they scale. And the way that they scale is moving to other cities and other locations and just keep growing, building more offices and growing that way. Obviously, we are going to, do that as well. But what we, really need to do is we need to master, like, I didn't start this company to just be a mom and pop recruiting shop. I know that we have something else that's very unique that no one's done, and it draws people to us from all over. And we need to perfect that before we can move to any other cities or do anything else. And the way that, we're going to do that is to build this technology platform so that way we can, be more efficient and, almost let the technology kind of, hold its own while we're, doing the, the other side, the recruiting side. And which is why, again, my plan, the biggest challenge I think for recruiting companies is finding that passive candidate. So that's an amazing software engineer who is not looking for a job. This is someone who's been at their company, they're not looking for a job. So the way that we're getting that candidate in our database is on the date side if they're single. So that amazing candidate that is untouchable is now in our database. And what I really am striving for, what I really want is for us to, the candidate logs into the dating side. And again, we using predictive analysis are advertising a position that we already know that they're a good fit for. And it's just an advertisement. So it's like almost you go on, a website and you see an ad for shoes. So it's your prerogative whether or not you want to click that ad or you don't. So we're going to use, words that we already know, like the person lives in this area, they're making this much money, because we have to know all about them to set them up on dates. So now we're using those insights to put in the ad. So he or she clicks it, and they're like, hey, actually, this does sound like something, I could be good for. So it's getting that passive candidate, and that's a strategic piece as to why we are doing this.
Sure. As far as you mentioned being frugal, obviously, with limited resources and sort of working very lean, the idea is that you work in the tech space. So I would think that there's a number of people that you can work with, whether you barter for them or with them, whether it be to help them get a job where they're helping you behind the scenes, but who's really helping you crunch all the numbers in basically the platform? Who's helping you build the platform? Because it would seem that it would need to be fairly robust, and you would need to have somebody who, is fairly good at what they're doing.
Absolutely. And so I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm not good at. And throughout the last 2+ years, I've figured that out, and I know that. And, you know, I have all these ideas because, you know, I have an entrepreneurial, you know, mindset where I'm up in the clouds, you know, having all these ideas, but I need someone who can actually implement this and put this, you know, into fruition and give us an MVP so that way we can use that to show the, you know, potential investors, you know, what we're working with. So that's, I don't know if you saw it or not, but on LinkedIn, again, I'm utilizing my network. And I think that that's one of the best, you know, pieces of advice that I could give to anyone: utilize your network. So I posted something about, you know, questions I had about, you know, predictive analysis and, you know, data and how to build a platform. And I had almost 3,000 views on it. And I had a ton of people reach out. Yesterday alone, I was, you know, meeting with someone, a data engineer, who was telling me how I could go about building the platform, and that he would actually volunteer and donate his time to help me, you know, to do that. So,
but you know, it's interesting because some people say, you know, you could teach somebody how to do that. To me, it's almost intuitive that that's actually who you are as a person. In other words, you're able to sort of reach out, you know, introduce yourself to people, and isn't that the rub, you know, whether you're a person in business who's trying to sort of do that sort of thing, or even if somebody's trying to find a date, you know what I mean? Either you're outgoing or you're not. So, like, what are some of the things that you're doing that other people can learn from out there, you know, utilize some of these tips and tricks that you can, you know, that you can offer up?
Yeah, I mean, again, just, you know, posting something in your public forum where, you know, wherever you have, you know, a network. I think LinkedIn is great for that because, you know, I could say, okay, you know, I may not be as social, or I like to consider myself as an ambivert because I'm introverted and I'm also very extroverted. And, you know, which is crazy, and not a lot of people believe that, but that's...
Well, you come up with a lot of those creative words. I like that.
Thank you. My mom made me study the dictionary when I was younger. No.
Oh, great. I'm telling you, that's a lot of fun. You know, you bring a few extra ones to a party, and I'm telling you, you're a big hit. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like I said, I started the company as a female 22-year-old where I was going into meetings with CEOs of these huge companies, and I was talking to them and telling them what to do. You know.
So were you? So it sounds as if you're not very intimidated though by that, because a lot of people at the age of 22, I would think, would sort of be, I'm not going to say starstruck, but in dealing with very successful people, however you want to define success, and I'll ask you how you define it in a minute, would sort of be slightly intimidated by that, and yet that wasn't to you.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I always think of when I'm nervous or I feel like I could potentially be intimidated is that, you know, you can't lose something that was never yours to begin with. So I could go into a meeting and say, okay, this client, I could totally bomb this meeting with this person, but I never had the client in the first place. So you put yourself out there, and, you know, whether, you know, you close the deal or you don't, or even I tell my candidates this when they go on an interview, you know, it was never your job to begin with. You're putting yourself out there. So you can only gain from this, whether it's the job or the experience. And, you know, that goes for any aspect of, you know, of life pretty much. And, you know, something.
But, you know, it's interesting. It does, in fact, take the pressure off. But, I mean, I remember when I was in law school, there was a lot of pressure for me. And I could have went in with the attitude that, well, you know, it's really not mine. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you're either going to pass or you're going to fail. And if you fail, that's going to send you down an entire different rabbit hole. If you gain, you know what I mean? So there goes the pressure. Do you know what I mean? And how do you deal with those stresses and pressure? I mean, isn't it the same thing with dating?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, you again, put yourself out there, be the best that you can be. And if it doesn't work out, then it's not meant to be, but you're learning as you go. Like everything about life, I feel like is a learning experience. And another thing that I always keep in mind, which has gotten me, you know, pretty far, is that we're all human. So whether you are a CEO of a huge company or you're a janitor, we all eat, we all go to the bathroom, we all do the same things. You know, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Like in my head, like, and this might be crazy. My mom tells me I'm crazy for this, but if I say I want to go meet Beyonce, I'm going to do everything in my power to go meet Beyonce because I don't think that it's out of reach. I don't think any is out of reach.
I was raised, my dad had the same type of mentality. That's just kind of been the way that I approach things, and you make it happen.
I mean, you have to be fearless. And, you know, anytime that I was like, at an event before I started the company, and I was at like a tech event, and I was like, do I go pitch candidates this crazy concept that may or may not work to this room full of 100 engineers? And I remember sitting in my seat saying, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I was shaking. I was terrified. I had cotton mouth. I was like very scared. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I have nothing to lose. So I went up there, and it was a minute long, and then it was done. I remember, and I ended up, and people, I went up there, and I was like, we find people jobs, and then all these techies, because there's so many recruiting companies out there, their eyes glare over, and they're like, not another recruiter. And then I say, or we find them dates. And next thing you know, everyone wants to talk.
So that's the hook.
That's the hook. That is the hook.
The Fast Pitch Round will be sponsored by Audible, and we learn more about our guests' favorite books and my favorites back at my book club. Go over to mitchellchadro.com/audible. In the Fast Pitch Round, I cover many fun questions to help us learn more about our guests, their favorite book, their quote, heroes, their favorite app, the resources that they recommend for under $100, what contributes most to their success, and some bad advice that's actually being given to entrepreneurs. The reason why I chose Audible to sponsor my Fast Pitch Round, that's easy. I love books, and Audible is owned by a powerful company, Amazon, that stands behind all their products. Audible was willing to offer an exclusive free 30-day trial to my podcast listeners with one free audiobook download. If any listener doesn't like their book, Audible will exchange it for you, and you can cancel at any time. Audible allows you to keep your free download, and you can choose from over 180,000 bestsellers, new releases, classics, and more. I recommend The Last Lecture by Randy Posh. So dream big, get inspired, and listen up. Go on over to mitchellchadro.com/audible. What's one of your favorite books, or maybe a book that you can sort of recommend to the audience?
So I early on I read a book, Good to Great, and I found that was
Jim Collins.
Yeah. But I found, and this was before I even had plans to start a company, but I found that it was very helpful. You get the right people on the bus going the right direction, and you get the wrong people off, and it couldn't be more true. And when I talked so a lot of my job is also to go into these companies that are hiring and teach them best practices around finding the best talent. And again, going back to my souffle mentality of, the candidates and interview process, because it's so delicate. It's like, baking a souffle. Like techies especially are very delicate creatures. You say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, and they're out. Like if you offend them by maybe showing up to the meeting 5 minutes late, you're out. And then it's on you, to the client. So, and that's if the client is running late to a meeting or if they say the wrong thing. Like it's very much, I need to educate, these CEOs of these companies how to find the best talent, because, it's a saturated market in terms of, companies that are hiring for these people, and you need to really stand out as a company to hire the best people.
What makes for a good candidate and what makes for a great candidate? And I guess the same could be true for a date. What are some insights that you can give people regarding the difference between being good and great when they're either A, going in for that interview, or when they're going on that first date?
Yeah, so I recently, last year, wrote an article. It was more so fresh. I was at the office late. I had spoken to a candidate, and he was like, I just don't know why I can't find a job. Like, I've been in a company for 10 years, and then I was laid off, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, I think it often has a lot to do with the fact that they don't necessarily know different ways to stand out, but being, showing that, you're human, you're passionate, you're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. It comes down to someone who just loves what they do. So companies that I work with, they're like, I want the candidate that has an entrepreneurial mindset, someone who, is doing side projects because they want to, not because they have to. And, and I always use an example of my friend who, kind of got his foot in the door with tech. He was in a fraternity at UCLA, and after he graduated, he couldn't get a job. And so he was like, well, in the meantime, I'm just going to create this app that allows pledges to, get into the fraternity. And so I was like, why don't you bring that to an interview? I was like, I can get you an interview. Why don't you bring that with? So he did, and he showed how passionate he was about it, and he got a job right on the spot. And so I think a lot of people just, kind of maybe want to do the bare minimum and let, an opportunity come to you, but you need to put yourself out there, and you really need to stand out among all the other candidates that are interviewing for the exact same position. I always say, and this is more kind of on the sales side, but I one time went to a meeting and I did research on the person I was meeting with, and I saw that he likes cigars. So I brought a cigar to the meeting. I got that client like in the snap of my fingers, and it was because I did my research. And I knew my audience, and that's, I tell candidates to do the exact same thing. Do your research on the person.
What are three main takeaways that you can provide the audience in terms of things that you have found over these last few years in starting up?
So one of the hardest things that I've had to learn is that you cannot control things that are out of your control. And I tend to be a person that likes to kind of control a lot.
Right.
And, we had a situation where a candidate was going to start a job. It was $20,000. We had that already accounted for. And he ended up slipping on ice and hurting his back really bad. So he couldn't leave his current company because of his healthcare insurance, and he needed it. So I was like, well, that really stinks. And now I need to go tell the investors that $20,000 is not coming in. But what can I do? Like, there's nothing I could have done about that. Like, that's something that happened, and you just need to move on from there.
And how about the second takeaway?
Second takeaway, I would say starting a company, and I've never obviously had children myself, but starting a company to me would seem what it's like to have kids. You need to nurture and you need to be there and, really take care of the business as if, it's your child. And Ben Horowitz, actually in his book said, I slept like a baby. I woke up every however many hours and cried. And that's very, very true, in starting a company.
So the hard things about hard things, right?
Yeah. Yep. So what I say is that you need to take care of yourself so that way you can take care of your baby, which is your business.
Sure. And how about your third takeaway?
Third takeaway, let's see.
I know you can come up with something, Amber.
I would really kind of just reiterate on the fact that nothing is out of reach. Just believe that you can accomplish it, and you can. I know that's really, stereotypical to say, but it's, I don't know. I truly believe that. And also have a really strong support system because, there are going to be, like, the highs are really high and the lows are really, really freaking low.
Yeah, this is not for the faint at heart, right?
No, not at all. Your mental stability is going to be a big challenge. So having, like, family and friends that can kind of talk you off the ledge when things don't go right, is very important. Because there are nights that, it's been tough, but you just got to get through it.
MitchellChadro.com/Snappa. I actually interviewed that Christopher Gimmer. He's the founder of Snappa on my show 28028, and I've been using it ever since. And a lot of the audience have begun to start to use it as well. How are people going to kind of stay in contact with you? What's the best way that people can reach out?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, but my email, my phone, we're in Philadelphia, right in Center City. We have people come into the office and just, even like it's a co-working space. So we have people sometimes work out of here with us. And, I'm just really a phone call or an email away.
I can put links back on the show notes if you want.
Yeah, it's our website is candidatephilly.com. And then we tried to buy candidate.com, but a guy in Australia has been sitting on it since 1992. For $1 million something.
He wouldn't sell it to you unless you paid him $1 million for it.
And I think it went up. That was back in 2015, but I think he's now selling it for more because of the political stuff.
You know what I mean? That's perfect. No, this has been a blast. I'm really glad that you came on. Do you want to say anything in parting here?
I appreciate the opportunity to share my story and to talk with you. Anything that I can do to help anyone, any of your viewers or anything, or you in particular, I'd love to in any way I can.
Awesome. Amber, this has been terrific. Thank you so much. I really thank you. And we're really going to look forward to seeing, your continued success.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care. Be good now. Bye-bye.
Hey, you too. Bye.
In closing, let me ask for my listeners' help. First, please subscribe to my email list at MitchellChadro.com/signup. You will get all the full interview transcripts, my ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, where I talk about these free resources in show 006. You'll get the startup checklist, education and training materials, and other resources just by signing up at MitchellChadro.com/signup. Listen up, trusted friends. It's your business, it's your family, it's your life. Go out and live it. back at mitchellchadro.com/sign-up. Help me boost the rankings of the Listen Up Show, the Startup Entrepreneur Podcast, by providing a well-written review in iTunes. mitchellchadro.com/iTunes. It helps other people find the show. If you actually need instructions on how to do this, you can find that back at mitchellchadro.com/sign-up. Thank you so much for subscribing to my email list and providing a written review on iTunes. Until next time.